They are light. I just want to check if I understand everything here. Yay. Thank you so much for having me. So as he was so kind to introduce me, well, I come from a family and a tradition of being born, living, studying, working at altitude. And so this gives us a different perspective of the world. So I am so used to that environment that when I come to a hospital here at sea level, almost, where everybody in the rest of the world lives, I am stunned by what I see, But actually, we are the weird ones, not you, because everybody does everything at sea level, But we see things so differently that what we want to show you is what we see. This will take years and years to show, because we have to study many things. We have to re-study everything that has to do with physiology and life. Because as we were talking before, throughout time we have thought that physiology, life, what was normal at sea level. Because most of the populations in the world developed there. And so everything was studied in range so that we could know what was wrong in the highest or lowest range, and therefore disease. But what if we are more adaptable, as my father said before, than we think we are? And not only genetically by the changes we have throughout generations, but also through epigenetics and other things that we already have in ourselves. So one of the things we see a lot and we question a lot are the papers we read from people on sea level talking about chronic mountain sickness. Now it's important to understand that most people who learn and talk about high altitude are mostly related to acute mountain sickness, because you climb up and then you come down and that's what you study because that's what you experience. We have the privilege to be living up there, so our perspective obviously is different. And I think it's awesome, and it's great that we can actually contribute and contrast these differences. So one of the things we do find everywhere in the world are strokes. The second leading cause of death in the world, they said. I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that about 1 million people die from this in India every year. And so in Bolivia we have it as well. Bolivia has different heights, not only the highlands because of the Andes, but we also have valleys at 2,500 meters, and we also have the lowlands at the Amazon areas. And we do find differences in these heights. Okay, so what I want to talk about is chronic mountain sickness, which my grandfather called polyerythrocythemia, and I will explain why, and cerebrovascular accidents, which are also called strokes at high altitudes, and why this is important. Okay? In particularly now that I saw certain things at your hospital that really made me question several things. Okay? Where's it there? So this is the institute where we work. Okay. So where are we here? I mean, if we are from Bolivia, here. Sorry, I'm only understanding this. This is Bolivia, this is India. So why did we come almost for 2 days traveling here, 2.5 or maybe 3 actually, if I count my numbers right, It's because we have the mountains here, but you also have the mountains here, and we have in common that both of us have to live with this altitude change situation. And so actually it is said that 5 to 10% of the population who live in highlands in the world will experience chronic mountain sickness. What are the most evident signs of this? So many people might know this from literature, but they don't really actually experience this. They may experience it in a different way with secondary erythrocytosis, with all the patients that have these deficiencies here. But of course, your values are very different to ours because of the situation we live in. So to make it simple, what are the most evident signs would be related to a lower saturation of oxygen, arterial saturation, that will be related to an increase in the erythropoietin production in the bone marrow that will increase the number of red blood cells. Therefore, the oxygen content in the arteries of oxygen and therefore an increase in the arterial pulmonary pressure. So all of these things are related to pulmonary hypertension, a right heart hypertrophy because of this, and an increase in the number of red blood cells. All these clinical signs are above normal values in these patients, and they change from altitude to altitude. And therefore, as well, they are reversible when people go back to sea level. Why is this important? Because when we read what people have talked about this throughout the world, we find that they fix the values of what would be considered above normal. And we find a problem with this, because in the way we work, we see that, I will explain later, for instance, in La Paz, here. One of the things we do find is that you have to understand where this comes from. Okay, so if you're saying these are the common signs for this syndrome, you have to think that maybe it has a relationship with the respiratory center, maybe it is in the lungs, like COPD, in the carotid bodies, in our receptors and everything, in the heart, in the kidneys, in the gonads, in the bone marrow, in aging, in a combination of two or more. But the thing is, in real life, if you would find guidelines, if you would follow guidelines for anything, would you treat all these diseases the same way? Probably not, because every one of them have different ways of being, The cells are organized differently, the function as well. The cells are organized in a way that makes them have the function they have, so it's completely different. So what they have in common is, I didn't know we did have this. I've never did it with sound, so I'm sorry about that. So the common denominator for all of these would be that somehow they are telling us when we have an increase in the red blood cells that there's some kind of chronic hypoxia. Okay? But of course, it is different if you have a tumor in, for instance, the kidneys, and you have more erythropoietin than usual and so on. Okay. But that's what they say, in papers and everything. What we see in the real life scenario, because these patients are related to all kinds of symptomatology. For instance, they are dizzy, they can have headaches, they can have problems concentrating. That's what the literature says. You can have, varicose. You can have problems thinking. You could have congestion in different organs. But sometimes we actually, when we see these people, they are completely normal. They have no symptoms. You actually have to run a test to find out by mistake that their values are over normal. Why do they come to consultation? Because somebody scared them. I went to every single doctor and everybody told me I have chronic mountain sickness. And I'm afraid because they say it's dangerous. So since they haven't found a solution, I came to you because somebody told me that maybe you might help with this. That's what they tell you when they come to consultation. Or they are concerned about their cyanotic looks because they tend to be a little bit more, bluish, purplish. So people might think they were drunk, for instance, constantly because of their looks, congested. And so this is very important to understand because my grandfather, who started this way of thinking, who was also a physician, found that actually you have to take into account several things. One of the things is that when you see a patient in consultation and everything, you rarely see them with only one problem, They have diabetes, but they also have hypertension, but they also have obesity, but they also have, psychological problems, but they also have a nutritional problem, and that's a patient. It's one thing to see every single variable in a different panorama, and it's another thing to put them all together and find the patient as a whole. And so the triple hypoxia syndrome is fundamental to understand how this works. So why in the literature do these people say that these people have a lot of symptoms, but we don't see that in practice? So one of the things you have to take into account when my grandmother described this, what he wanted to explain is that things were overlapped. Okay. So to begin with, since we live at high altitude, we already have a hypoxic status from being in a higher environment because of the the barometric pressure. That's the first hypoxia. Everybody has that when they're. On top of that, anybody, all of us, if we would have a chronic disease, you would have a second hypoxia. You know, that adds up. So that would be those people. You know, the people who have something, they have lower oxygen levels than normal. They may be more congested in looks, but they're fine. They walk in consultation. We even have patients with very low values, and they feel kind of short of breath. They don't feel okay, but they don't really know what's wrong with them. But it's not really terrible either. And then you have these people who have a chronic disease who get a temporary disease. Let's say you catch a cold, you have an asthma crisis, you get a bronchitis, something that adds up and lowers this even more. So that means when these people come, we run some tests on them, and we find out that they have these things overlap. You treat the temporary diseases, and they compensate. They have something, it is true, but they manage. They are stable. You know, it's like the pH. You compensate it, it works fine. Okay? So this is one case of that. So they tend to be more congested in the extremities, particularly the areas that are exposed to the sun. No? So chronic mountain sickness are different kinds of disease plus chronic hypoxia. Now many people who write about this in the literature, they say, okay, we're doing this study and we're not taking in account the patients who have heart disease, lung disease, or any visible trait. So we're looking for this one thing that happens only at high altitude that is not related to secondary diseases. But the interesting thing is that even though they say that, they still give the same treatment to everybody. When you're at high altitude and you have erythrocytosis, excessive erythrocytosis like they call it, everybody receives exactly the same treatment. Why? Because they are concerned of clotting in our response. So we did some studies. So some years ago, we measured the hematocrit relationship to age in chronic mountain sickness. This is important because one of the things they say in literature is that usually, I have it written here because I want to say it exactly as it is explained in the literature. In the papers it is said, at high altitude, a significant number are at risk of developing chronic mountain sickness, a progressive incapacitating syndrome caused by lifelong exposure to hypoxia. So it is assumed that the longer you are exposed to hypoxia, the worse you will get throughout time. So this is literally a death curve, you know? Literally it's predicting your future. But it's not so, because we actually did find, my father will probably show you this in other conferences, that we have a higher longevity rate at high altitude in relationship to the lower lands in Bolivia, taking into account similarities in population, in habits, and so on. But we did find this in other places in the world as well. So to be exposed to hypoxia can be challenging in some cases, but it can also have some benefits. And that's what we have to learn to manage. You know? Okay, so apparently this is actually not a line that goes up like they say. It's actually sort of a curve that flattens. And this actually flattens because probably there's anemia throughout the end of your life, and many other factors that don't contribute to this height as such. Okay. So my grandfather said, by observing all these things, acute mountain sickness exists because it's evident that somebody who is put just straight into some stressful situation will have an impact. It's like the story of the frog, you know? I don't know how you probably have a name for this in English, I'm not sure. But they say that it's not the same to catch a frog and put him in boiling water than turning on the temperature progressively up. It will adapt in such a way that they won't realize that they actually could die without noticing. There's an adaptation in this, no? So it's not the same to expose somebody right away than to do it slowly. And so it exists because you can have some trouble. But most people, when they come to high altitude and they experience something, usually it's a little bit of shortness of breath, a headache, and gradually it should disappear. If you come and you get worse, and you catch a cold, you have an infection, you develop cerebral pulmonary edema and so on, when we run checkups on these people, they have something they had not diagnosed at sea level. And this is important because then it's not the mountain who's giving you the curse of disease, you know, because this chronic mountain sickness word sounds as if it was kind of like the curse of the mountain. You know? You go there, you get this. Like it was in the old times that people believed that because of the gods you could get something from this. You know? Throughout time we have learned that when you understand certain mechanisms, you start to understand how to also deal with these things. And so it is important to understand that when you find something, there are underlying problems that were not evident because your body was not in a stressful situation in order to make this apparent. Okay. At the same time, chronic mountain sickness, which is not the same, it's what it has been named internationally, is not a defined entity. Several diseases are the same as those at sea level, but in a hypoxic environment. Their common sign is a low oxygen tension in blood. So this is my grandfather. He died 4 years ago. And so he decided that the most important trait in these situations, actually, because of how much people are concerned around the world about this, was the increase in the number of red blood cells. So he decided that actually, instead of talking about chronic mountain sickness, which is completely undefined, you should talk about polyerythrocytemia. Because that would mean you actually have many red blood cells. For us, polyerythrocytemia is more precise because you're talking specifically about this, but this is syndromatic. It's like if you would be cyanotic. If you're cyanotic, you're not going to treat the color of your skin. You're going to treat the underlying problem. It's exactly the same with this. If you have an increase in the red blood cells, you have to treat the disease, not necessarily the erythrocytes. This is very important because everybody is focused on this instead of the problem. You know, it's the same with when you get hepatitis. You are not thinking about the color in your skin because of the bilirubin. You're thinking about the problem in the liver, and so the other things go away. We have several patients, we treat the underlying cause, this goes away. And if it's a chronic problem, then it doesn't go away, but it doesn't necessarily signify a danger or a threat for the patient. So what is polyerythrocytemia? The increase of red blood cells above the healthy normal high altitude resident values. In the city of La Paz, which is about 2,100 feet, 12,000. Thank you. We define it as being above a hematocrit of about 58%, and I will talk about this undefined situation. So this is La Paz. Here on the other side, actually, we don't see this part, we have El Alto. This whole La Paz, which is the capital, and El Alto are part of the same area, but we work together. No? And so some people are born in El Alto, which is higher, at the highest place, and others we work in La Paz. And basically due to situation, wherever you have your house, you live, you know, if that's in the middle of the desert, that might be your home, just as long as you have water in general, no? That's, throughout history, that's how people actually made their cities. And here we made our cities because we have Lilimán, which I will explain later, which is, by being close to the mountains, we also have reservoirs of water. So that's why people went there to these places. Okay. So why is this important? Because in between the highlands and the lower lands of this place that is still already high, we have a difference of about 1,000 meters. And so that means that it's very important to understand this hematocrit change, and hemoglobin as well, of course, but particularly to understand the percentages in relationship to the others. No? Because it is not the same to establish, in the literature it says, that you have excessive erythrocytosis above 19 grams per deciliter in men and above 21 for women. No? Pardon, sorry, you're right. No, women have less, no, 19 and 20. And so this is important because when you do this, we have a small classification for this. Once you get it above 58%, you can have several variations. They can go very, very high, and people are living with this. So when you are afraid about your hemoglobin going above 19, we think this is funny, you know? Particularly when you bleed them. Are you kidding me? We have like 3 times more, and we're not afraid. Is this because of only high altitude, the pressure changes or anything? Is it because of angiogenesis? We don't know, we have to study. But for us, this is not alarming at all, you know? Okay. So why is this important? Because if you take the same values for different altitudes, this will make a hazard in the analysis you have and in the interpretation of how you should proceed. If you do, we did this in comparison, comparing 2 different hospitals in La Paz and Natalalia, the ones I told you about. Both of them have a similar population, and so we could see that with those values, 28% of the males had this situation, and in El Alto, more than half had. In females, likewise, we had a little bit less in females and more in El Alto, but that was like a quarter of the population. This is important because when you read the literature, it says, when you read these papers about chronic bowel sickness, it says, about when you are talking about these people who have this situation, common death causes include cardiac insufficiency and strokes. Okay, so according to these people, half of the population in El Alto die from strokes. That is amazing, you know? And it's amazing because you don't see that. That's what the people say, but that's not what we experience. So what is a cerebrovascular accident? Like most know, it's a stroke. It has 2 sides mainly. It has more, but this is the most important one. Okay, so you have the ischemic stroke and the hemorrhagic stroke. If you have a thrombosis, that the crystal clot, you produce ischemia in one region. It has its variables, and the same with the hemorrhagic stroke. You have bleeding because of mainly the vertige of a vessel, leakage. This will lead to serious consequences, paralysis, and even to loss of life because it's life-threatening. Okay? So what was the objective of this study? So since we have to rewrite everything, we have to start from the beginning, you know, and go back to basic things and restart from there the whole of the panorama. So we have to. So I decided to make a small, just a small study to just show the tendency. In relationship to this, I am now planning a multi-center study. I have many people in Bolivia and in Latin America working on this to have more numbers and to make it absolutely precise. But it's important to make sure you're not having too many mistakes with this, but with a small thing, so you can do this better. No? So we decided to define the prevalence of erythropolycythemia, which is this excessive erythrocytosis, in a preliminary study among the cases who developed a stroke. Yeah? Because it's one thing to have a percentage, an estimate of what you think will happen if people develop this, but it's another thing to count the cases that actually had this. And so, among the patients that were admitted in this hospital, which is a private hospital, like you see, our big hospital is a tiny one for you, might be like more like a consultory for you maybe, but for our population, this is one of the main hospitals that are there for strokes because they have the technology for this, and it has good resources, so it's a good way to gather your data. And we did this throughout 3 years, more or less. What were the specific objectives? Identifying the number of patients with polyerythrocythemia that were presented as a CVA. No? And actually, in this case, we're more interested in knowing, first of all, how many strokes we had. That's what I'm going to explain here. Inclusion criteria. The presence of all CVAs of these Why also yes? Because we also want to know how many we really have and what are they related to. Of these, detecting how many had this, no, particularly, so is this really a huge defining factor? Because in the literature it says the most important leading cause of ischemic strokes at high altitude is the polyerythrocytemia. And I don't think so, because every time I was there and we had an emergency and somebody came in with a stroke, it wasn't somebody who had a different value scheme in their hematocrit and hemoglobin value. So I thought this was not necessarily a parameter. Of these, how many had people who had both of these variables had comorbidities? Why? Because it's not only a question of counting how many cases you have, but you also have to find some kind of cause relationship between what you see, you know? Okay, so you do have these cases, but is it this only due to their thickening of the blood, or are there other possibilities of why these people are presenting? So these are the results. This is the percentage of the people, see the big cake, who had a stroke from all reasons, but they had a stroke, and only 6.25% of these patients, which is 6 out of 96 patients, presented a stroke, having also polyerythrocytemia. So this, just by looking, doesn't suggest to me that this is a huge risk. You know? Then what happened with these people? So you go deeper into this thing. Okay, so these people who did happen to have this, first of all, their age was about 55, second half-life, we would say. Half of them were females, half of them were male. Exactly the same with the ischemic and the hemorrhagic cases. Now from this, I wouldn't suggest it means you have half and half possibilities of developing this. I just think that if there are many reasons why you could have polyerythrocytemia, then you also have to suggest that these patients have different situations that leads them to this. So it's not necessarily related to the particular gender or particular type, because this might be because of a hypertension state, but this might be because of alteration in the coagulation. I don't know. You know, that you would have to see in the exam. And so all of these cases, they had concomitant diseases, just like I thought they would. And amazingly, all of them presented hypertension associated with this. So the question is, are these people presenting hypertension because they have a higher amount of bulimia, because higher viscosity? Or is this because hypertension is also, you know, one of the things that happens when you have problems with salt intake, when you have problems with apnea sleep, when you have problems with several other atherosclerosis, aging, you know? And so we have to, then I would have to make a study that you look into these patients and see what other things they have to have a hypertension, because it's not clear to me that this is because of the higher number of red blood cells.
Polyerythrocytemia.
Yeah, what did I say?
Why they have polyerythrocytemia?
Correct. And I also wanted to see if they had other diagnoses. So in this case, you would see some pulmonary disease. So in this case, for instance, this could explain to me why they had such low values of oxygen. No? And in this case, only one of them died. So that was also interesting, because Professor Cusadas has done some research, and they saw that there was a better recovery in the patients that were preconditioned. My patients. Yeah. And so I also have to see this in real life.
Yeah, you're 27.
Yes. Exactly. But only one died. The rest of them recovered. I don't know the extension because I have to do a court, but they did. Okay? And here we have the hematocrit and hemoglobin. No?